Welcome. Today we're getting into a really significant piece of legislation, the National Defense Authorization Act for Fiscal Year 2026. This thing, well, it touches almost everything in U.S. defense, not just the big weapon systems, but personnel, tech, you name it. We want to give you a clear shortcut to understanding what's actually in this proposed bill. And hey, before we really get started, if you find these briefings useful, please take a second to like and subscribe. It genuinely helps us keep bringing these conversations to you.
Absolutely. So we're looking primarily at Senate Bill 2296, that's the act itself, and also the committee report, Senate Report 1/1939, which gives a lot of the context and rationale. And it's more than just money, right? It sets out authorities, priorities for the military.
Right.
The main purpose, stated right in the report, is authorizing funds for the Department of Defense activities, military construction, Department of Energy defense work, and, crucially, setting personnel levels.
And the context they set is pretty intense.
It is. The committee report states quite directly that the U.S. is in, quote, the most dangerous threat environment since World War II. They talk about an axis of aggressors, that's China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and argue their goal is to dismantle American influence globally. That's the frame.
Okay, so a serious backdrop. The report also mentions that warfare looks much different today, even if some challenges feel familiar. What are those key transformations they're pointing to?
Yeah, it's fundamentally about technology changing the battlefield. We're talking AI, unmanned systems, drones, basically, but much more advanced hypersonic weapons, next-gen aircraft, space capabilities.
So not just small tweaks.
No, definitely not. These are seen as game changers. And the report suggests there's, a broad agreement, Congress, White House, DoD, allies, that we need to tackle these threats head on. This leads to talk about reindustrialization, basically boosting the defense industrial base and making the Pentagon's budgeting and buying processes faster, more innovative.
To keep pace with the tech changes.
Exactly. It's about speed and agility.
So how does all that translate into the actual budget numbers? Because we know these figures are always huge. Can you give us the overview?
Sure. So the administration asked for about $848.5 billion for the main DoD programs, plus roughly $33.8 billion for DOE national security stuff for FY2026.
Okay.
But the Senate committee is recommending a higher overall authorization. We're looking at $925.8 billion total. That breaks down to about $879.3 billion for base DoD, $35.2 billion for DOE security programs, and another $11.3 billion for defense things outside the main bill.
So a significant number. And you mentioned it's tied to pay-as-you-go rules.
That's right. The Statutory Pay-as-you-go Act of 2010, basically it means this spending needs to be accounted for so it doesn't automatically increase the deficit, at least on paper, according to those rules.
Got it. Okay, let's shift from the big picture threats and the money to the people. The NDAA always impacts service members and their families directly. What are some of the key personnel provisions this year?
Right. Titles 4 and V really dig into this. First off, it sets the authorized end strengths. That's the maximum number of personnel allowed for active duty and the selected reserves.
The basic headcount authorization.
Exactly. Then, under military justice, there are a couple of notable things. Section 531 deals with notifying installations about military sex offenders. And Section 532 mandates quarterly reports on sexual assault prevention and response efforts. So, continued focus there.
Okay. What about education and training? That seems to be evolving, too.
It is. There's clarification on how members of Congress can nominate candidates for the service academies. They can order them. Professional military education, or PME, is pushed towards more flexible options, specifically mandating asynchronous distance learning choices. So learn at your own pace. Yeah. And it formally establishes Army University, integrating various Army schools. There's also a push for a strategic thinkers program, requiring an office to manage it and brief Congress annually. Plus, mandatory annual training is laid out for things like ethics, national security law, law of armed conflict, rules of engagement, the real foundational stuff.
That's comprehensive. Any specific policies on academy admissions or athletics? Those sometimes draw attention.
They do. Section 547 explicitly prohibits the service academies from considering race, sex, color, ethnicity, national origin, or religion in admissions.
Yep.
And Section 548 prohibits male individuals from participating in women's or girls' athletic programs at the academies.
Right.
On a different track, Section 549 creates a pathway for cadets and midshipmen who are, exceptional, talented athletes to potentially play pro sports after their service commitment.
Interesting. And what about support for military families? That's always a critical piece.
Absolutely. Subtitle F focuses on family readiness. There's assistance for local school districts that educate a lot of military kids, and guidance on managing special education in DoD's own schools.
Practical support there.
Yeah. And things like regulations on using cell phones and mobile devices in DoD schools reflecting modern challenges. And importantly, continued efforts on childcare. Section 5556 supports expanding early childcare options, and 549 requires a report on unmet childcare needs near military bases. It's a huge issue for families.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, that covers a lot on the personnel front. You mentioned support. Let's talk healthcare. Title VII usually has some significant updates. What's in there?
Right, healthcare is vital. Section 702 expands TRICARE. Select eligibility for hearing aids specifically. It now includes children of retired members.
A specific but important expansion.
Definitely. And Section 704 authorizes non-reimbursable medical forensic exams for sexual assault reporting, even for some individuals who might not otherwise be eligible for military health care, ensuring access to that critical exam.
That seems crucial.
It is. Then there's Section 705, which is pretty significant. It mandates TRICARE coverage for fertility-related care for active duty folks and their dependents. This includes quite detailed coverage for IVF, in vitro fertilization specifying at least 3 egg retrievals and unlimited embryo transfers based on ASRM guidelines.
That's a major expansion of family building support.
It really is. However, on the other side, Section 706 explicitly prohibits using DoD funds or facilities for sex change surgeries or related procedures. So a clear policy restriction there.
Okay, so a mix of expansions and restrictions in healthcare. Now let's get into the technology and modernization aspect. This seems like a core theme. Modernizing, innovating, transforming conflict. What are the big bets here?
Yeah, this is where you really see the push towards future capabilities. The report talks about Pentagon reforms for efficiency, innovation, and a modern budget process. Under advanced manufacturing, there's a lot happening. Section 219 pushes for robotic automation and making munitions think faster, safer production.
Makes sense for scaling up.
Right. Section 220 requires setting up dual-use, advanced manufacturing hubs connecting military needs with commercial innovation. And there's a really ambitious goal in Section 220A. Qualify and approve 1 million parts using advanced manufacturing, like 3D printing, by late 2027. For drones, ground vehicles, metal parts.
1 million parts, that's a lot.
It is, and they specifically highlight the need to boost the industrial base for hypersonic weapons, especially materials like carbon-carbon composite. There are bottlenecks there.
Right, the materials science challenge. What about AI and digital tech? That's everywhere now.
Huge focus there too, Title X6. Section 1623 requires a team to assess and oversee AI models, creating a standard framework, trying to ensure responsible use.
Important guardrails.
Yeah. And Section 1626 establishes an Artificial General Intelligence Steering Committee at a very high level, DepSecDef and Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs co-chairing it to look at where AI is going and how DoD should adapt. Section 1627 mandates a cybersecurity framework specifically for AI and machine learning systems, protecting the tech itself.
Makes sense.
And Section 1628 is interesting. It directs removing or excluding AI from specific Chinese companies like DeepSeek from DoD systems. Supply chain security concern.
Okay.
Plus, Section 1629 requires a plan for adopting digital content provenance, basically. Tools to verify images, videos, fight deepfakes, information integrity.
Crucial in the modern info environment. What about space? Always a key domain.
Absolutely. Title XV covers space. Section 1502 mandates a big study on future space launch capacity, looking at sites like Canaveral and Vandenberg for heavy lift needs, long-term planning.
Strategic infrastructure?
Right. Section 1503 clarifies that weapons for space control targeting adversary satellites should be acquired and run by the Space Force, potentially using commercial help. Defining roles. And a very practical item, Section 1520 requires deep cleaning of the underground launch control centers for ICBMs every 5 years. Basic but necessary maintenance.
Keeping the existing deterrent safe and functional. And specific weapons platforms. Any highlights?
Yeah, the bill touches on several. Accountability for the new B-21 bomber, upgrades for the CMV-22 Osprey, strong support for the Collaborative Combat Aircraft, that's the program teaming fighters with loyal wingman drones.
That CCA program seems really important.
It's positioned that way. Also, considering more F-16s while planning to divest older C-130 transport planes and A-10 attack aircraft. Modernization trade-offs. On the Navy side, there are provisions about developing unmanned surface ships, the TAGO surveillance ship program, and sticking to the requirement for 31 amphibious warfare ships.
So maintaining naval force structure while bringing in new tech.
Yeah.
Got it. That covers a lot of advanced capabilities.
Right.
What about the physical foundations, bases, infrastructure, environmental issues?
Right, Title III and Title XE8 get into that. A big one is PFAS contamination, these forever chemicals. Section 315 gives DoD authority to use innovative tech to destroy or dispose of PFAS.
Tackling a major environmental health issue.
Yes, and Section 317 provides for bottled water for affected communities. Also on the health front, Section 2824 mandates eliminating indoor mold in DoD housing. Quality of life focus.
Important for families.
Definitely. Strategically, Section 2842 designates the test range at Kwajalein Atoll as the Ronald Reagan Space and Missile Test Range. And environmentally, Section 2848 prohibits using funds to develop a conservation area at Naval Support Activity Annapolis, showing a balance being struck sometimes.
Right.
Finally, under nuclear security, Title XXXIA adjusts plutonium pit production goals, that's core to the nuclear deterrent, and sets up a new Rapid Capabilities Development Office within the NNSA, the nuclear agency.
Streamlining nuclear modernization. Okay, so we've covered domestic angles, tech, personnel, but this bill is also heavily about the global picture, right? Alliances, adversaries. What's the international focus?
Absolutely. It really reflects that axis of aggressors framing we talked about earlier: China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. Countering their perceived influence is a major theme. Section 901, for example, establishes an economic defense unit. Its job is to work across agencies and with the private sector on economic security issues, even sharing intel for potential prosecutions, using economic tools as defense.
A broader definition of national security there.
Exactly. In the Indo-Pacific, there's a lot of focus. The Pacific Deterrence Initiative, or PDI, is extended through FY2026, though the report does mention some concerns about how it aligns with strategy.
Okay.
The Taiwan Security Cooperation Initiative gets modified, specifically adding medical gear and combat casualty care support. Very practical help. And Section 1237 is significant. It pushes for a joint program with Taiwan to field uncrewed systems and counter-drone tech, including co-development and co-production. Deeper partnership.
Co-production is a big step.
It is. There's also a required report on Taiwan's digital infrastructure resilience, and Section 1243 formally invites Taiwan to the big RIAMPAC naval exercise. Strong signals.
Definitely. What about Europe and Russia? Obviously, Ukraine is central there.
Yes. Section 1223 extends and modifies the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative. It includes planning for weapons depot maintenance and promotes a program called Jump a Start for rapid support and training.
Continued support for Ukraine's defense.
Right. And then there's Section 1230A, which is quite pointed. It says U.S. decisions on military basing and training in NATO countries should consider that country's progress towards spending 5% of its GDP on defense by 2035.
5%. That's higher than the current 2% target. A big push for burden sharing.
A very big push. Beyond those major theaters, there's targeted cooperation, too. Section 1206 sets up a pilot program with Panama to boost cybersecurity for the Canal Authority and their security forces.
Protecting a critical waterway.
Exactly. An encouragement to strengthen ties with Guyana to counter crime and drug trafficking in that region.
Okay. And you mentioned supply chain security earlier. There are specific prohibitions on procurements.
Yes, several. And they really highlight concerns about reliance on potential adversaries, particularly China. Section 628 bans buying seafood from or processed in the PRC for commissaries.
Seafood. Interesting detail.
It is. Section 1040 prohibits connected vehicles from foreign entities of concern. Think data security risks on military bases. Section 846 bans buying certain critical minerals, molybdenum, gallium, germanium, from non-allied nations. Securing strategic materials.
Right, the mineral dependencies.
Yeah. Section 879 mandates phasing out acquiring computers and printers from Chinese-controlled entities. And Section 880 restricts using foreign-made additive manufacturing machines, again focusing on supply chain integrity for that critical tech. The report also notes the value of the state partnership program linking U.S. National Guard units with foreign militaries for cooperation.
So a multi-pronged approach to global engagement, alliances, and countering perceived threats woven through the entire bill. Well, that was certainly a thorough walkthrough. This proposed NDAA for fiscal year 2026 clearly covers immense ground. from very specific benefits and policies for service members and families, all the way to high-level strategy, cutting-edge tech like AI and advanced manufacturing, and managing global relationships and risks.
It really does. The sheer scope touching individual well-being, advanced technology like space control, global alliances, it underscores just how broad the definition of national defense has become. And I think it leaves you wondering, just how fast will these technological shifts and geopolitical changes continue to reshape our military's priorities and structure? What further adaptations will we see next year and the year after? It's a constantly evolving picture.